Thank you everyone for joining so far. We'll be starting soon in a few minutes. And if you will be so kindly to feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say your name, where you're from, and how you learned about this event. Thank you everyone for being here. Nice to see all of you. My name is David Zagaya. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a graduate student in the astronomy department at the University of Chicago. I've also been an organizer with UChicago Against Displacement. Thank you for joining our roundtable about reparations at the University of Chicago, sponsored by the Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture at the university, and organized by UCAD, which is UChicago Against Displacement. So UCAD is currently working with the CBA Coalition to stop the university's active displacement of Southside residents. We've been building on this work from the former Reparations campaign, which started back a few years ago, who published groundbreaking work on the founding history of Chicago. And we want to continue to work in coalition with various groups around the university to fight for the stop of displacement of Black folks across the South Side, for the reckoning of the university's history and its impact, and wanting to have reparative acts to build and offer care for the Southside community. So I'll begin with a couple housekeeping items. First, we have automated live captioning, as well as synchronous ASL, which is American Sign Language interpretation. Please let our Zoom host, Danielle, Uday, Naomi, or Savannah know via the private messaging function if you have any technical issues. Second, if you have any logistical questions, please put them in the chat so one of the event organizers can address them. Please also refrain from unmuting yourself unless you are being called on to speak, so that way we'll be able to hear everyone at one time. Third, in case that there is Zoom bombing, where we will be moving to the roundtable to a different Zoom room. So that way, there will not be continuing interference, and we'll kick out anyone who attempts to do so. We'll make sure to email you an alternative Zoom link if that happens. If anyone needs support during to processing in case that does happen, feel free to reach out at uc.againstdisplacement@gmail.com or message us on our Instagram handle of @UChicago_against_displacement. And lastly, today's event will be recorded and made public and available through the CESRPC website. So getting into some of the background history, as some of you may know, UChicago has a history of gentrifying the surrounding Southside area, from Hyde Park to Woodlawn, all the way over to Washington Park, and displacing a long-term residents that has also continued to affect South Shore residents as well, and other surrounding communities on the South Side. So our goal for tonight's event is to listen deeply to experiences of community residents and leaders who are living in these neighborhoods and discuss the daily impact that UChicago has on UChicago's presence has on the South Side. So the University of Chicago is currently on land, which currently is known by settlers as Chicago, which is the Anglicization of the native name Chicago, as it was. And in order to recognize, and also recognizing that this land used to belong to people of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi tribes. I'm mentioning this not merely to acknowledge, my own position with respect to the land and my presence here, but also to remind us that anti-colonization efforts forever need to be at the forefront of our work. And we know, but we'll continue to remind ourselves that there is no justice on stolen land, and the rematriation of indigenous land is essential to any project of liberation. UChicago's messaging as well to its affiliates also tends to use language that insinuates UChicago is open to change, that it's willing to strive for justice and provide a so-called safe and vibrant community. But UChicago is yet to reckon with its founding ties to slavery and continues to ignore the repeated demands for reparations. It refuses to listen to our most marginalized neighbors. Our demands come in tandem with hundreds of organizing efforts, including the Trauma Center campaign and community-led conversations around public safety. Today, we focus on demand for reparations to, again, urge the university to put its money where its mouth is. I will also close this introduction with some community agreements. Community agreements are a set of prompts for helping us be mindful about the space that we're collectively creating. They are not a set of rules for policing and punishing each other. These are reminders of the kind of spaces we'll try to create collectively. I'll read some of these out loud so that way we're all aware of them and that you acknowledge your agreement on camera or put up a Zoom reaction if you are able to agree to them. So our first rule for our first agreement is that we'll be assuming responsibility for our space. That means I'll recognize my powers and privileges, such as the fact that I'm a cis man, and making sure that I don't overtake up discussion during this panel, and making sure that folks who are often put at the most marginalized intersections are able to speak. Two, I will also assume positive intentions and hold accountable for any impact of what I say and do, and that I will respectfully engage and take opportunity to learn when folks want to call me in on something. The third is that we also respect the labors that we hold for ourselves, and bring attention to equity, not equality. And I'll try and ground myself, take pauses, and treat each other with respect and care. Fourth, we'll also try and use accessible language, specifically language that doesn't use a lot of jargon or acronyms. And finally, we'll make sure to embrace imagination for these next 90 minutes. That way we can truly dream of a way that we can get to the world that we want to. So yeah, feel free to signal if you agree on camera or with a Zoom reaction if all of you are willing to agree to them. All right, perfect. So right now I'll switch over to introducing each of our panelists. So when I introduce each of our panelists during our panel portion for this event, we'll be introducing each of the panelists and going over some pre-submitted questions that have been provided to each of the panelists. And then we'll move over to the audience Q&A section. Please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and our Zoom host will make sure to keep track of them throughout the event. So introducing each of our panelists, we first up have Ms. Patricia Tatum. Ms. Tatum is a homeowner of Woodlawn, a longtime resident, has worked as a part of UChicago Medicine as a nurse, and has been doing a lot of great work in order to ensure that Woodlawn residents aren't displaced from current projects in the neighborhood. Next, I'd like to also introduce Tahiti Hammer, who is a member of Not Me We, former longtime South Shore resident, and has been doing a lot of work into organizing a community benefits agreement for South Shore to ensure that folks are not displaced in South Shore. I'd also like to introduce Dixon Romeo, organizer with Not Me We as well, and also with the CBA Coalition. And do we have Ms. Sharon Payne on board?
Ms. Payne is.
All right.
She's currently trying to dial in.
All right. So we'll let. So yeah, hopefully Ms. Payne will be able to join us soon. But for now, thank you all for being able to share your, being able for you this time to share your experiences and that we can listen to some words of wisdom that you have for us. So I guess the first question I have for each of the panelists is, could you briefly describe some of the organizing work that you do, the groups you're with, and how you got involved? I'd like Ms. Tatum, could you go on? Oh, Ms. Tatum, you are on mute.
Sorry about that, David. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm involved with the CBA, and I've been an organizer for years, mainly with unions throughout the city of Chicago. But I got involved with CBA because of the affordable housing and people being displaced in this community. I've been with the CBA for a little over a year now, and how I got involved was through reading articles about STOP and CBA agreement. And so I wanted to get involved, and I think I reached out to both you and Savannah and got more information and started attending meetings. And through that, I became more involved.
Thank you, Ms. Tatum. Glad that you could be here. TD, would you like to go next?
Did you say Tahiti?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tahiti. I've been organizing for the past 8 years, of course, with unions. But I got involved with the CBA through Dixon, through another organization that he works with. I really got involved with it because I have a passion for my community. I have a passion for equal rights and equality for people within my community. I live in the South Shore area. I was one of those people who are being affected, well, was being affected by the changes that are coming to the South Shore area. I want to speak out for those who feel they don't have a voice. I want to speak out for the seniors in my community, you know, where it's not as easy for them to get out and voice what's going on and how things are affecting them. So I want to be that voice for them. That is why I got involved, to make change. And, you know, like I said, I thank Dixon for, you know, bringing me on board and letting me have a voice and sharing what's going on within the South Shore community where I live.
Thank you for sharing, Tahiti. And how about you, Dixon?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I know we've been on Zoom for like 2 years, but I still really haven't figured this camera thing out. So, um, so my name's Dixon Romeo. I'm born and raised here in South Shore, and I got involved in this work out of necessity, I think. Well, it's okay. So I think there's 2 parts to that question, right? It's like, one, I think like living here my whole life, you like see the signs of stuff, and you, as you learn and become more learned. But I think I really started like actually organizing or like trying to figure out how to fight back, right, against a lot of this stuff that's happening. I would say is around when I graduated college. I didn't go to University of Chicago, didn't go there, but I went to Grinnell College, which, is, some say it's the Harvard of the Midwest. I just think I call it Grinnell. But when I graduated from college, I would say like 2017, like I started doing local school council at Parkside, in 2018. And then from there, just the more and more I was noticing stuff, I just started doing more and more. And then from there, started doing like tenant organizing, and then started doing, different stuff. And then eventually started working, because just as a South Shore resident, right, like I was immediately seeing changes in the neighborhood I've lived in my whole life, and wanted to see what I can do to fight back. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Dixon. And I see that Miss Sharon Payne has joined us. Miss Payne is a co-founder of Southside Together, Organizing for Power, STOP for short. She's done a lot of work with the Trauma Center campaign and making sure that the university is able to provide a trauma center for Southside residents. So that way, the university hasn't provided that need for several decades. And so, Ms. Payne, would you be so kind to say a little bit as to how you got involved into organizing and what made you want to do so?
Ms. Payne is on the phone, so you may have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, let's try again. I'm sorry, I'm having equipment failure here. But let me say this. Say hello to everyone. In all the communities I've lived in, there's always been a need for someone to speak out for those who cannot speak for themselves, or someone to motivate their neighbors. I started motivating my fellow neighbors, when I was a teenager, because there was a need to get the word out about jobs and programs that were going on, and even dances, whatever, get the word out to the people. So I started that, and this has been something that I've been doing basically most of my life. And I started with STOP. I'm one of the co-founders, and there was a huge need. There's always a housing crisis going on. So we had neighbors that were actually being bullied by the landlords who lived around the corner there, and we started organizing, getting together, getting the word out, and and telling people, you don't have to stand alone. And there's strength in numbers. So this is what we did because of the need and the ongoing need that's going on now. It's always been a huge need in this community for affordable housing, livable housing, and as stress-free an environment as you could possibly get, because if you live with a lot of stress, you don't live too long. Did that answer the question?
That was a wonderful answer, Ms. Payne. Thank you for sharing. So for our next question that we have is, so as I mentioned a little bit in the background, UChicago was founded off of a slavery. The original founder, I believe, Stephen Douglas, founded, got the university started with some money he had from his family of owning a plantation down over in Mississippi. And, the university's origins literally is from slavery. The university throughout the 20th century has demolished many parts of Hyde Park, Woodlawn, and Washington Park, kicked out many people out of their homes, and torn down many businesses. And, when you keep seeing all this information, it's a lot to take in. But I'd also be interested to hear from Ms. Tatum, what are your personal experiences of how UChicago has been impacting Woodlawn with its presence as they continue to expand? And how has that affected your organizing efforts?
Well, the university, with expanding, I've seen a lot of people lose their homes. I've seen buildings taken over by supposedly private owners, but it turns out that the University of Chicago are backing these people to move out current residents. I find it offensive and demeaning that people who've lived here, some of these people have lived here all their lives in Woodlawn, it's second, third, fourth generation. And because they're deemed not acceptable, in the eyes of the university, they're moved out or have to be relocated, or they use the tactic of raising the rent or finding reasons to put them out of their housing. There's no reason for that right now. The university should be helping people. They should be helping, longtime residents who are not a problem, who've been here, who've weathered the storm. We've been here. We've been the ones who gone through gang activity, drug sales, all sorts of things over the years, and we persevered. And now all of a sudden that this is a hot area, why should we be forced to move out? And the University of Chicago is behind a lot of this. A lot of people are blaming the Obama Center for it, but the University of Chicago had a long-term plan with staying here. And if they're gonna stay here and be the major presence in this community, they need to do something to contribute to the community.
Thank you, Ms. Tatum. Tahiti, would you be able to talk a little bit about how UChicago's presence has affected South Shore?
That I can. So I lived in the South Shore area for 42 years. It has affected a lot of people in the community, me, myself personally. I have been looking for a home for 2 years within my community because I wanted to stay within my community. But behind the Obama Center coming, they have literally jacked up the prices on homes in my area to the point to where a hard-working citizen as myself can't afford to stay in my own community that I lived in all my life. Before I even started looking for a house, I was renting a home, and my landlord was like, I'm gonna have to go up on the rent. I'm like, how much more? I mean, I'm barely making the rent now. And she was like, well, I'm sorry. Well, they're going up on property taxes. And it's hard because like talking to the seniors within the communities, they're all facing this hardship. And it's sad because for this center to be coming, it's supposed to be coming for the people that's in the community. But what people? Because the people who have been here for years are not going to be here to enjoy it because they're being forced out. Whether rent is being raised up, whether property taxes is going up, you know, it's a variety of things that is affecting the community that's not fair. So it's like, what do we do? How do we fix this? How did something that they claim is supposed to be here for us is not? Like the lady who spoke before me, my mother, when she moved on our block, she was actually the second African American family to move on that block. So this just goes to show you how long she's been there. I'm 42. My mother would have been 80. How is people who seen this community go from one thing to another be forced out once you all claim you're bringing in something good? Who is it for? Because it's not for the people who are here. So I joined this group because I wanted to know, what can I do to fight against this? How do I save the people who've been in this community for years to be able to stay here, to be able to live where they're comfortable at, to be able to enjoy the goodness, as they say, that's coming to the South Shore area? It's not fair. It's not fair to any of us that work hard to be where we want to be forced out.
Thank you, Tahiti. Next questions that we have are for Ms. Payne and Dixon. So Ms. Payne, you've been a long time Woodlawn resident, and you've seen the university like commit a lot of really like taking advantage of Southsiders. And can you like talk a little bit about why people such as the mayor, older folks have been called out the university and like held them accountable when they've been like doing this for over like decades?
First off, the University of Chicago, and I agree wholeheartedly with the last two panelists. The University of Chicago has deep, deep pockets. They provide the money. The fact that we're being forced out now, this is part of a master plan. Any land that's close to any body of water, in not just in America, but around the world, you build cities around it, and that's the priciest land. They knew this. They allowed the gangs to run free through here, and the people that were living here had to put up with that, and poor police services, and just the fact that they weren't handling their business. University of Chicago has even donated, is my understanding, donated money to gangs, okay, in order to keep their agenda going. I'm quite angry at the fact that our elected officials that we put in there to take care of us are just there to take care of themselves. They have gotten richer over the years, and we've gotten poorer and kicked out of our places. What we're going to have to become smarter voters, and the University of Chicago is going to have to be seen as the demon that it is. It could, and it's not just the University of Chicago. It's all of these conglomerates like that, and they move into neighborhoods. They take over the neighborhood. They gentrify and they kick out the people that had been living there for years. This is what they do in America. So we have to call a slug a slug. As far as this center going up, they knew. Obama was an employee of the University of Chicago. They knew he was going to run. As a matter of fact, I'm sure they helped finance it. I knew, and having lived over here 40 years, that this was just a matter of time before they were going to be pushing us out. So, yes, this is definitely a University of Chicago thing, The things that they've said to us over the years when we were trying to fight for a trauma center and things like that is horrible. And I wish we had something to record them on at the time they were doing that. But, okay, I've overstayed my time, so let me be quiet.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Dixon, do you want to talk about why older folks and the mayor have not been holding university accountable, specifically in South Shore?
Yeah, I want to, I'm going to take some liberty with your question, David. I'm sorry. And I'm going to because I think when I hear Ms. Tatum and Tahiti and Ms. Payne talk, I think what I want, because I want to center what they're talking about, because my experience is the same, right? Like my family's been here since, I don't know, at least the 50s, right? And I think there's been a very clear influence that I can speak to, right? Just about how university's presence works in a larger system that it is a key player in, right? That affects housing market, that affects development, that affects education, that affects the private police force, that affects the roads, right? That are allowed, that there's clear influence there. But I think there's like a larger frame too, right? So I think the primary thing, right, is that all institutions, right, or all firms, right, we're talking about University of Chicago, right? So we could talk about, like we could use some economic models, right? Shout out to Milton Friedman. We're talking about, right, like there is the frame is that, institutions have a purpose and a goal, right? And the University of Chicago, I think there is some, obviously education is a great thing and we do need higher education institutions, but I think the larger goal of the institution is to like exist, right, and grow, regardless of the impact that it has on folks in the community, right? So the University of Chicago, throughout its history, right, I think David pointed out at the beginning, right, has had constant fights decade by decade with Black folks in the community, with Black folks on campus, with Black folks who worked in the institution. There was a very huge fight around the way the university dealt with and took care of Black folks in the community. And that happened 100% with Ms. Payne and Ms. Harper and other folks in STOP and Coco and the coalition during the fight for the trauma center which also happened, right, in the 80s, which also happened, you can go back to like the 1940s, right, where the university wasn't taking care of folks, right? The housing stuff and the discrimination that the university has done with folks in the community is like a consistent documented thing. There's plenty of scholarship on it, right? You can read Arnold Hirsch, you can read all these different folks. But like in the current day, right, to your point about like how does the university interact with the city and government and politics? Like it is a major institution, right? It is a thing that, you know, if a mayor or alder person does not have a relationship with the institution, that's a negative, right? The university can use its weight and power to say, well, if we don't get this thing or we don't get this reaction, then we're going to pull this thing. That makes you look bad. That hurts your chances at reelection or whatever. But then I think there's also like a large economic impact, which touches on like, I think the real experience that like me and Tahiti and Ms. Payne and Ms. Tatum are feeling as long-term residents. I'm 28 and it occurs to me that I'm a long-term resident. I don't feel old, but it's, you know, I'm wise, or I don't know, I'm old. But so for example, right, the university does not, right, the primary goal, if you look up the university's budget, right, I'm making all their money off of tuition. The university, right, does not pay taxes like no big universities do. And they, you know, because the university is a tax shelter, basically, right? It's a 501c3, but it still has, you know, I don't know what the endowment is now. It's like 12 billion or whatever. It can use that status, right, to do the stuff that actually is profitable, right? Which is using public dollars, right, for the research and then turn over and either patent that or individuals take that right to go make money, right? Further from that, right, the university then has a stockpile of cash that it can use to do development, to expand, to compete with other universities across the world. And the talent that they're trying to pool, they're not folks off of 69th and Paxton, they're not folks off of 63rd and King, right? They're folks from all over the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the cost of that is that folks who live in the neighborhood surrounded lose resource in order to benefit others, right? Like that is the primary, there's a ton, it's obviously more complex than that, but when you boil it all down, that is how the university operates. It collects revenue from students. It collects revenue from the federal government, which comes out of my tax dollars. Everyone on this call's tax dollars. It then uses that money to fund research, right? Which is great things, right? To fund the hospital, to fund the marine biology center and like all the stuff, right? Great stuff. But then, right, there at no point is there any mechanism where that stuff directly comes back to folks who live in the area around the school, right? I'm lucky enough that my parents were in a place, and particularly like my mom and grandma were in a place where they had to bend over backwards to give me a good public education. I have the option, someone like me maybe has the option to apply and get into the University of Chicago. But the majority of folks that go to Parkside Elementary, the majority of folks who live in this zip code are not gonna go to that school. So the inherent public good of the school, right, is never felt by folks. We can't even go in the bookstore, right, without potentially being an entry. Not to mention they got the largest private police force in the world. So good luck making it to the bookstore, right? But that's like the frame that I think is really important, which is like all the things that we're talking about that David mentioned in the history that Ms. Payne talked about with the fights from the last 20 years the community organizations have had to the current impact of folks like Tahiti essentially being displaced, right, because of the Obama Center and the speculation that comes with that. The center does not come here unless it's hosted by the university, right? That private bid that came out that folks didn't see till after the fact, the center doesn't come here because of that. And, you know, that has an effect, right, on the market. And, you know, I may disagree with, you know, the economists and the folks who work at the school, but I think we can all agree they're not dumb, right? And we see even with this recent incident on campus of the young person being killed, which was a tragedy, the response from the university is then, right, what can we do to protect what's important to us, which is folks from not the community feeling safe so that they can come here versus folks who live here and have to deal with that all the time. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap up. I'm sorry, but I just think it's important to frame this stuff. So that's my piece. Sorry, I'll pass it back to David.
Thank you, Dixon, for that analysis. So staying on this topic about like, you know, the power that institutions have, for Tahiti, could you talk a little bit about what it's like trying to, you know, essentially like fight for, things such as affordable housing, jobs, for South Shore residents, like due to the fact that the presidential center is, like coming over to Jackson Park, and like, they've been influencing a lot on, like, like there's like, like Obama has said that I will not sign the community benefits agreement. Like, how has, that fight for affordable housing and jobs been for South Shore when a major like institution is having like such a huge sway on like city politics? Edie, are you there?
I am. I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that question? Yeah. I'm on a bargaining meeting and this. I'm sorry.
My bad. Yeah, the question is how, what was I saying? Right. How, how major institutions, such as the Obama Presidential Center, like they're like, because they have like such a huge sway on like city hall and like local politics, how has that made it more difficult to organize and fight for affordable housing and jobs?
Honestly speaking, I'm not exactly sure yet how that's affecting, because we really haven't had, we're still getting it together to where we're trying to make that change. And I don't want to speak ahead of something to say what's working and what's not working, because I do know that if we all stick together and get these communities together, we can shut them down. We can shut them down at the polls. We can, protest in front of our alderman's office, the mayor. It's 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 ways to bring about a change, but we all have to want to bring about that change. It's about sticking together. It's about educating our community that you all could change the people that we have in office that's making these rules and decisions over us. So I believe right now, in speaking of head of thing, I'm not, but I am going to say this. I do believe we can make that change and make it for the good. We can make it where it's for us and not about the politician, not about the people who have all this money in their pockets, because that's who's making these rules, people who got the money. But us as hard working, tax-paying people, I believe in my heart that we can make those changes. I do. I believe we can put a stop to politicians who got the money making all these decisions. But we got to do it together. And that's why we're doing the work that we do and organizing the way we organize and communicating with the people within our communities to let them know that you do matter. Just because they have money don't mean you don't matter. You do matter.
Thank you, Tahiti. Love to hear that answer. People power all the way. So I want to ask Miss Tatum about, like we've been like briefly mentioning once in a while about like the trauma center campaign and how, the university has been like so resistant to, building one for Southside residents. Miss Tatum, since you were a nurse at Chicago Medicine, could you talk a little bit about your experience there? And like, how do you like, like what's been like being Woodlawn residents while working at UChicago Medicine?
Well, during the time that I worked at UC Chicago Medicine, there was a different culture there. They had no other choice but to accept trauma patients, because that was really the biggest flux in the emergency room was trauma patients from the community. With the boycott for the trauma center, most of the medical staff was for the trauma center because lives were being lost, with people having to, if a trauma, say a gunshot happened on 61st and Cottage Grove, 2 blocks from the University of Chicago, that person had to be transported to Cook County or someplace else that would receive them. So that time is of the essence when it comes to saving lives. And the University of Chicago, you know, they just completely ignored the needs of, again, of the community that they're in. If you're going to be in this community, you know that trauma is a big thing. You know that people in this community lack insurance, lack education. So they're going to use the emergency room as their primary care. They're only going to go to the doctor when something bad has happened, some type of trauma or something that they can't get a remedy for at home. You know this, but still you're not making accommodations for it. At one point, the University of Chicago had a clinic on 61st Street between Ellis and Ingleside that serviced the needs of the community. People could easily walk there. They didn't have to worry about if they had bus fare, things like that. It serviced those people who lived at 63rd, 64th. They could walk to the clinic, and the clinic had a walk-in so that you could walk in anytime between 9 and 5 and get the needs of your children. It was a maternal child clinic, so it serviced the need of mothers and babies and teenagers. They had a teen clinic. When they moved that clinic to 55th Street, that was a strategic move because that eliminated a lot of people who could not walk to the clinic anymore, who lacked transportation to get to the clinic. The university's just blatantly disrespected this community for medical needs. They did have a program in the 80s where they were working on decreasing the mortality rate of infants in Woodlawn, which that program was a success. And I worked with that program, and it was basically funded through public health, not so much through the university, but most of the funding came through public health. But programs like that, you would think that the university would gauge the needs of this community and follow them up, especially because addiction, mental health are big things in this community. And they're not addressing those things. When people come into the emergency room with a mental health problem or addiction problem, very seldom are they referred to agencies that could really help them. And if they are, it's an agency that's not accessible. Again, transportation is a big thing for poor people.
Thank you, Ms. Tatum. Yeah, for Ms. Payne, could you speak a little bit about what it was like fighting for the trauma center? And like what was needed in order for like the university to finally budge on building something that should just be a necessity for many outsiders?
There's always a need for a trauma center, and the fact that they had one and chose to shut it down and kept it shut, I guess, for somewhere like 10 years or something like that. They chose to do this. They decided that they did not want any Medicare patients. They also started, if you weren't already in a part of the hospital, going to their clinics, they started turning people away from the clinics who were on Medicare. I mean, Medicaid, Medicare. Medicaid, I'm sorry. Medicaid, the state health program. And what we actually did have a young man who was with the organization who did get shot at 61st and Cottage Grove. And I don't know if people are familiar with how ambulances work. Once you get in there, they radio ahead, and they either to the hospitals, and hospitals are always on. They were always on pass by, They had to take that young man all the way up to Northwestern, which is a great hospital, but that's 10 miles away, and time is of the essence when you've been shot, or you have a heart attack, or you have a stroke, or you're having a baby. Time is of the essence. They chose to do this because they were going to sit there and suck out the resources of the community through the federal government, through the city, through the state, through private donations, and and just not include the community in what they were doing. We started protesting right away. It took us 5 years. We did have a lot of nurses and doctors who were with us. We came out and they supported us. There were a lot of students that supported us from around town, and it was a sin and a shame. We actually had guys that came out several times to explain to us why they couldn't have a trauma center, and we kept shouting them down. There's no reason. You have no reason. Then the guy had the nerve to tell us, well, if you people would stop getting shot, and everybody went, what? You mean the you people and getting shot? So like somebody, deliberately does something to get shot. We were so angry, and that they had to get that guy out of there. I just have to say that they had to get him out of there. But this is their mindset, and they're still knocking down good housing to put up new buildings when they actually could be using some of these buildings that they already have that they have shut down and are not using. And they're choosing to put up new buildings because they're this great hospital that they think of themselves as. I don't know if you've seen the slick commercials that they have on television. Oh, they're real slick, and I know they pay a really good dollar. So that's the University of Chicago's mindset. They've been prejudicial for years. This is not something new. This is not something new. They don't treat their employees right. They don't treat their patients right. And I don't mind. And I tell anyone that's going to a large hospital, you need an advocate. You need to learn how to advocate for yourself, and you need your people, your family, to advocate for you. Because even in a nice hospital, you can get left behind because they are short-staffed, and they don't get around to you. And the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's the way it is.
That's true. As a nurse, I can tell you that's true.
My mother and sister are nurses.
Mhm. You're speaking the truth. I always tell people, when you have someone in the hospital, you have to show up and give a presence so that people know that family member is loved and cared about, because that person will get more care, because the staff is like, well, Mr. Brown's family comes every day at 6, so make sure he's clean, make sure everything is done right. Whereas if you've got a patient and nobody speaks up for, they're the last ones to get care a lot of times. And that's just the reality of it, especially in this time of COVID.
It's not just COVID. This is the way it's been for a long time. Unfortunately, woe to you if you don't know how to speak up for yourself or have someone that's going to come there and speak up for you.
Well, unfortunately, too many people now go into nursing, not so much for the compassion or because they're driven to that, or they have they really feel the need to do it. Is because of the pay and the comfort level that it allows. But for really passionate nurses and doctors who went into it for the right reason, you will get good care, no matter what.
I believe you.
Thank you, Ms. Payne and Ms. Tatum. So we're about to reach our last question that was pre-submitted before the event. But before I get to that question, thank you. I'd like to remind us to thank all of the panelists for sharing their experiences so far, and also remind everyone in the audience that you can submit questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit them, and we'll make sure to get to them in the Q&A portion. So the final pre-submitted question for the panelists is, what does reparation mean for you, and what do you envision it looking like from the university? Dixon, would you like to go?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think the university's done enough studies. I think they have put out enough statements. They have talked about transformation and integration and support of the community. And I think at this point, right, we need the university has to, I think, one, stop the harmful practices, and then two, literally put, I think, take some of those, not some, a significant amount of the money and wealth that it has, right, and put it in the community in ways that touch and affect all residents, right, and create public good, right? So not, funds to support businesses is not, a terrible thing at the end of the day, right? But that, again, you fund businesses, the majority of that benefit goes to the owner, right? Very rarely the employees, right? But the majority of folks maybe don't feel the benefit. They get access to spend the wealth that they don't have on it, right? I think the majority of stuff that the university can do, right, is put money back into the tax base to fund public institutions in the community, right? So public housing, so affordable housing, our public schools, right? Things that help stop the core root of crime, which is like poverty, right? Those are the things that the reparations look like, and they look a lot like the demands that UChicago Against Displacement and the coalition put out, right? Like around long-term funding affordable housing, right? Consistently every year, right? That the community has control over, right? And has access to funding, right? Local schools, right? And putting programs into our public schools, right? The university has a lot of charter programs, and that's really great for them, I think. But ultimately that takes money away from our public schools. So I think things like that are what reparations should look like with the institution. And to be honest with you, I think the dollar amount is probably an extremely conservative figure, but I think it's better than nothing to start.
Thank you, Dixon. Tahiti, what do you imagine reparations looking like, and what it should be from the University of Chicago?
Just to like piggyback off what Dixon said, I completely agree about, that money being put where it's really needed. I had this conversation with Dixon maybe like a month ago, and I was explaining to him like, they get all this money, but it's not put where it's needed. It's put where it's not needed. They talk about crime and all these other things that's going on within our communities, but they do not understand what they've done to our communities when they're taking funding away from it. When you take programs out of schools for these kids, when you shut down community centers that give these kids an outlet, what do you expect to happen? But again, I think like, we spoke about earlier, this was all a plan, it was all a setup so that these things can take place, so they can say, why are we funding or why are we putting money into these communities when it's not being appreciated? And that's not the case. I think there's a systematic plan behind everything that they do, and it's to hold us back. And for what? When you look back into, like history, we have done and created so many things. We are so intelligent and so bright and so smart. But when you don't have that financial stability there to kind of help you, then you feel defeated. But that's why groups like, CBA and what we are part of is here to put that voice back. We are here to let them know that it's okay. We got this. We can fight back. We can get this money put back where it's needed. We can hold people accountable for what they say they're going to do for us and not just tell us. So you got a lot of people talking and saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But when it's time to put it to where it's being said, it's not being shown. We got to, hold them accountable for what it is that they're saying. I don't have a problem with gentrification in my neighborhood. I don't. But don't push me out to bring in who you feel is worthy of this community when we've been here all this time. So, like I said, I agree with Dixon. The university could put that money into the communities where it's needed. Stop putting the money where it's not needed. Not saying that Make our programs just as good as the others. Stop shutting down our schools. Put into our schools, invest in our schools. Put programs in that's going to help these kids be productive. So, in their adult lives. A lot of stuff has changed, and it's changed for the bad. But I think it can be reversed. I feel that it can be turned around. I got faith and I got hope, and I'm not giving up on that. And I'm not going to stop speaking out about it either. But that's how I see it.
Thank you, Tahiti. Ms. Tatum, could you talk about what you envision reparations looking like, and specifically from the University of Chicago, what it should be?
For me, reparations looks like something that's fueled by the needs of the community. As the two previous speakers said, we have to address the needs of the community and not needs that have been told to us that what we need. They need to really ask the community, what do you need? For those who've been here, who weathered the storm, what do you need? Do you need help with buying a home? And not price. People, so many people in this community would love to be homeowners. We know that that's the American dream. That's usually the start of wealth in a family, generational wealth. Help the community for more people who really do want to become homeowners to achieve that goal. Everybody doesn't want to be a homeowner. Some people just want to be, or I say just, but a lot of people prefer not having that responsibility of home ownership, but it should be all fueled by the needs of the community, not from outsiders coming saying, well, I think you need this, I think you need that. I think, like Dixon said, enough studies have been done. Universities have studied us under a microscope for so long that they know more about us than we know ourselves. But they need to respect us enough to come to us and ask us, what do we feel like we need? One of the things is to be able to have businesses that are owned and operated by members of the community. To have, as they said, centers for kids to go to after school, centers for mothers to go to who are not working so that they can learn skills, and not just a skill to take into the workplace, but to take back home to help them to be better mothers and to help raise their children, and to get some of those skills that maybe were not passed down from their parents, to address the trauma in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Tatum. And Ms. Payne, how do you envision reparations from the University of Chicago taking form?
Oh, there are so many ways and so many. First, I need to put out here that we over here, as well as other communities of color, have been redlined, which is a form of slow violence. When the white person comes in and they're able to buy a place next door to yours at a much lower rate, and you've got to come in and buy the same place for 4 times that amount. That's slow violence. This is part of a master plan. See, they've been studying, like she said, for generations, and they've got it worked out how they're going to get us out of here. I can give you an example. When they heard about the Obama Center coming in, they sent people out to the senior citizen buildings, which I am one, and they said, well, they sent 3 people out, had a room full of people, and they said, well, listen, we want to know what you guys want in the neighborhood, what you need in the neighborhood. They asked and they took questions, and nobody wrote anything down out of the 3 people sitting there, which means that was just for show. They think we're stupid, and unfortunately, we've not actually been driven to movement. We all have to get up out of our comfort spaces and move. As far as reparations are concerned, they owe us so doggone much. It's a shame. We'll be lucky if we can just get a fraction of what they owe us. We'd be very lucky. But housing and as far as education, our children are getting they're getting horrible education in public schools. They're taking our public education money and putting them into these little semi-private schools. And these semi-private schools, like the university has up, they did a study on these schools across the nation. Most of them have a failing grade. Most of them have a failing grade. So why are we still putting money into these? I forget the name of the schools. These little private, semi-private schools they have going up. Why are we doing that? So our children are getting inferior educations, so therefore they cannot keep up. They need to put more money into education, and this is another thing that they're doing. They're passing children from grade to grade and without them actually learning the grade that they're in. They just pass them on. They call it social passing. So therefore you have someone who's reading at a third grade level, and all of a sudden he looks around and he's in eighth grade or he's in high school, and he has to drop out because he can't keep up. So invest in our population, and then you'll get more out of that population. Invest in our schools, invest in our housing, invest in the people themselves. And as far as this $1 billion, you're right. We need, that's just a fraction of what we need, you know.
Thank you, Ms. Payne, and to all of our panelists. So we're now going to go over to Q&A portion where audience members have asked questions and we'll be offering them to the panelists. These first two questions are from Corley from Hyde Park Herald. So this question is for Tahiti. What block was your family from in South Shore? Yeah, could you provide that, please?
Yes, so I lived on 77th and Saginaw. I lived on 77th and Saginaw for 35 years before I moved on 79th and Colfax. I lived on 79th and Colfax for the past 8 years. I just moved out of the neighborhood because I couldn't afford a house in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Tahiti. This next question is for Ms. Tatum. How long have you worked at UChicago Medicine, and from what years?
I worked for UFC from 72 to 94, and then I went to the public school system. And the last few years, I've worked with women with opioid disorders, pregnant women with opioid disorders, and their children.
Thank you. This next question is from Matthew. This is for any of the panelists. How did the end of the eviction moratorium last year affect housing in the South Side? Are people in these communities currently experiencing an eviction wave? Anyone want to take that?
I'll take it, David. I think there are like two parts to that question. Because I think the first part is that when we talk about eviction, most folks post the eviction moratorium, most people do, I don't like the term, right? But the term is self-evict, right? They look and they say, well, I'm already behind, or I got the 5-day notice, despite the fact that's not how the process works. So I'm going to leave, right? So although there are, currently evictions being filed for folks in South Shore, like the majority of folks, I think anecdotally, just as someone on the ground who does tenant organizing, the majority of folks are self-evicting, right? So we are seeing like a lot of, I can say confidently, we're seeing a lot of vacant, right, units in South Shore where folks have the building has either been shut down, or folks got evicted, or folks self-evicted, and now the units are empty, right, in anticipation for more wealthier folks to come in.
Thank you. This next question is from Anna. It's about the Trauma Center campaign. And Anna says, it sounds like the Trauma Center activism was especially successful because the movement built coalitions across different demographics. I guess this would be best for Ms. Payne. What sort of central motion action do you think could inspire the same kind of coalition building? Moreover, I'm a transplant in Woodlawn. I want to be the best neighbor I can be. Or some best practices that I can implement in my daily life to be a good neighbor and community activist?
First off, David, I don't think I quite got all of that, what you said, because you're not coming in really clear to my ears. But I think you're asking about the trauma center. It took us 5 years to do that. We walked around the neighborhood. We got names. We stood out there on the corner. I remember standing on the corner, getting them on and off the buses, getting them to sign. I did door knocking. We joined with other organizations to keep it going. We did all kinds of sit-ins and actions, as they're called, to get the attention across the nation, and it did get out there. This big bad expensive hospital sitting in the middle of the community and won't take people in. It was totally ludicrous, and they were looking bad. So they actually had to do something. Plus, their own employees were in an uproar about it as well. So all of this put together, even though it took us 5 years, but we couldn't give up. We couldn't afford to give up. We were losing too many people, and actually, they're Hyde Park residents, a lot of them. And I have to give it to a lot of Hyde Park residents. They came out, and what actually shut them down a little bit. We had a little Jewish woman who was with us at the time, and little old lady. She said, "Heck," she said, "if I stand up on a ladder and I fall down, that's a trauma. So you're going to tell me I can't come over here across the street. I've got to go all the way out to Northwestern, So there were examples like that actually got it going, and it stayed in the news a while, So bad press, and the fact that everybody's in an uproar about it. So they knew it was the right thing to do anyway. They knew it. It was just a matter of whether we were going to say anything about it. And this goes on it goes on the job. It goes on where you live. If you don't stand up and speak up, they will run over you every time.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. This next question is from Cameron. So Cameron's wondering that y'all have mentioned that you would want the university to invest in the community and the surrounding school system. I just wanted to get your thoughts on university's programs like the Southside Music Program and Neighborhood School Program. Do y'all have any thoughts on those?
I want to speak on that if I could. So the programs that I'm hoping I'm answering this question correctly for him. The programs that he is speaking of, not everybody qualifies for those programs. Just an example. So like they have the performance and fine arts schools within like some of the schools in the communities. They have some of these centers. If you do not make a certain amount of money, you don't qualify for them. So you have these programs in low income areas and in some of these other communities where the people who are in the communities can't afford. Some of the programs they have in some of the communities, because my son, only reason why he's able to, because I work for the Y, and my son attends some of the programs at the Y. The only reason why he's able to go to some of those programs that they have there is because I get a discount because I am an employee. If I was not an employee for them, I couldn't afford for my son to attend those programs just so he has something extra to do outside of school. And with the Park District, some of the programs they have, yeah, they're not really expensive, but they only limited to so many amount of kids who can come. And if you're not the first one to get there, your child is out. And not everybody has, transportation or can afford to travel elsewhere for their, for some of these programs that, is within means. So it's like the system set it up to me to where, hey, we're going to fix it to where, okay, you say you can't afford it, but this program is affordable. But where is it at? Can I get there?
Right. And can I afford to keep my child in it? Not just get them started in it, but to keep them involved in it. Like these music programs, if the parent has to buy or rent an instrument, that's an added cost that penetrates their budget. So it looks good on paper to say, oh, we've got a music program on the South Side, we've got a tennis program, we've got a squash program, but how many of these kids can afford to buy the equipment, to buy the uniforms involved, to stay involved in it? Or like she said, to even get the transportation to get to it. So it's just a lot of things that the university does. And it's about politics. It's what looks good in the press, what looks good on the paper. So to say, oh, we did this, and don't you see that we've got this center right here on 61st and Cottage Grove? But how many kids from the community, most of those kids that take advantage of that center are bused in from other areas. They're not kids that live in this area.
That's right.
Sorry, Ms. Payne, if you want to go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with Tahiti and Ms. Tatum. I think so. My understanding, to whoever asked the question, and if I'm wrong, let me know I'm wrong. The NSP program is a tutoring one, right? So it's like teachers, tutors, kids at the local schools, and the music program is like the one-on-one, like it's the one-on-one kind of like lessons that are supposed to be that are free. And I think they're like I have two thoughts on the question, right? So like first, I think Tahiti and Ms. Tatum brought up like just operationally, right? Like the universities are part of a lot of barriers that stop folks from even getting to the point where they can benefit from those programs. And then there's another question about like that I think about is like, if there's an economic value or cost to those programs, how much does that cost the university, and does it offset all the other stuff? And I think the answer is no, and it's not even close. I think right historically, right, like we know Raisin in the Sun is, written about, Lorraine Hansberry's experience in Woodlawn dealing with racial covenants that were supported by and pushed by the university, right? That's a wonderful piece of art. And that did not change, right? The material conditions that her family had to face and that folks have to face now. So there's nothing wrong with folks learning how to play the saxophone, but it doesn't stop their rent from going up because of the Obama Center. It doesn't stop, right, the fact that for many years, if they were to walk down the street and get shot and hurt, that there was no trauma center they could go to. And it doesn't stop the fact that the university is land banking as we speak, right? And so I think oftentimes, like just in general, in my experience growing up in Chicago, and you see it around the world, right? Those types of programs, there's nothing wrong with them, right? But you can't put that up against, in my opinion, you can't put that up against the cost of all of this disinvestment, the cost of, right, gentrification, the cost of the community violence that is exacerbated by gentrification, by the lack of housing, and by the lack of, adequate medical care, and the cost of, and I think there's even another argument to argue that you could, I don't know the number, but if you match up the money that the university charter schools get from the public health infrastructure system, I'm pretty sure that outweighs the wage that they could or should probably be paying some of those volunteers in that NSP program. So even when you look at like the core mechanics of the programs that are offered, it's dollars and cents compared to like what the university and then the ecosystem it creates is getting over off of folks. So that's my thought. You don't need the NSP program if the university pays taxes that go to community, because there'll be a music teacher in the school, not a student teacher that's a tutor. Maybe there's more tutors in the school, right? Maybe there's additional stuff. So I would just challenge that assumption around that. So that's just my thought.
And Ms. Payne, would you be able to provide a brief answer?
Say again, David.
Your thought, would you be able to provide a brief answer on the music programs that the university provides for the community?
There are no free programs from the university for the neighborhood. There are no free programs, And since they took music out of the schools are poor for not having them. Music is the life of most individuals, and everyone needs music in their life. And they've taken the programs for the most part, out of the public schools, and the university has the funds and has the money and actually has the space, and they won't use it for the betterment of the community in that area and other areas.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. So doing a time check, it's 7:20. We have a few more questions left from the audience. If someone from panelists could answer a question from Alex, they're wondering, how do we make sure that any money the school provide, like devotes to reparation, ends up in control of community residents, not like, something where there's a scenario where the university just ends up building housing in South Shore that they control? How do we make sure, any like form of reparations they do, the community is in charge of that? Does anyone want to take that?
The first thing I would say is to get it out of the hands of the university. That's the first thing, is to get it out of their hands and put it into an my thought is to put it into an independent body where the money can be distributed. Take it out of their hands, whatever it is they're going to give up, and then we need 10 times much as they're actually willing to give up. Take it out of and put it into a third party, I guess, and have it distributed. Or they also can give money to the up and running community services that are already up and running. They can do that. We also are going to need housing that's going to be built here in Woodlawn. They can build some of this housing. They have the money. They can build it from start to finish. They don't have to go out and get somebody to come up with the money. That's some of the ways that they can do it.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. This next question is from Hannah, Naomi, and Megan, and it's uplifting second question that Anna had earlier, which is, how can students and transplants to the South Side be good neighbors? What are some best practices that they can implement to be a good community member?
They can, we should drop the link and they can join the coalition.
There you go.
I agree with that. Drop the link so they can join the coalition. Also, another good way to get out in your community. Don't be afraid to knock on your neighbor's door and have a conversation with them. Talk to the people in your community. Get them involved. Let them know what you're doing in the community to help to make things better, the changes you want to see. We can't just always sit on the call and talk about it, but don't put action to it. The only way we're going to see a change is we have to put action to what it is that we say. We can't be like these politicians. We can't be like the mayor and everybody else. We have to put action to things that we say and hold people accountable and do what it is and mean what we say. That's how we're going to make this change come about. We have to, put on our big girls and big boy pants and get out there and hit this pavement.
Yes. And the good practice is to come into a community, get to know the community by attending community meetings, joining organizations that are already in existence in the community, and don't come into the community assuming that you know what the community needs or what the residents, your neighbors are going through. I had an incident where a transplant from Wisconsin who was here working at the University of Chicago bought the 2-flat next door to me. And he had all these grandiose ideas about what to do for the block. And he went and told people that he was starting a block club and that he was going to be president. not knowing that we already had a block club, that I was the president of the block club, and we already had things going on. He just made the assumption that he came to this community and that we didn't know what to do, and he was this savior from the University of Chicago, and he was going to turn things around for us.
Oh my God, that sounds like the so-called conquerors coming to Africa and assuming the Africans don't know what they're doing. Okay.
Yes, that's the way I felt.
I love all of your answers to those questions. Yeah, this next question, giving a 5-minute heads up, that's 7:25 right now. So one of the last few questions that we'll be providing is about the recent announcement of the university's community relations panel. So I guess for anyone who's familiar with the recent announcement of the new community relations panel, what are your thoughts on the recent announcement? And like, you know, what you really, and do you expect of anything from it?
I'll take this. I mean, everyone can take it, but I'll jump in. I think that, again, right, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think at its core, right, like there is already like a plethora of research that speaks to the different ways that the university has extracted resources and caused harm to the community. And I haven't seen in my study of like history or just in general, right? If we look at the university, right, at no time has a university-led effort led to like repairing the harm that it's caused. It's come from the Black residents in the community, right? Or the students or the employees or the workers at the university organizing and forcing the university to do what happens, right? Like we don't get, you know, we don't get the trauma center, we don't get the Woodlawn housing ordinance, we don't get the university, you know, initially for a couple decades, right, stopping the expansion, right? We don't get any of that without folks organizing. So I don't really see how there's no historical evidence that anything meaningful will come from it. But I think that hasn't deterred and it won't stop what's been happening, what there is historical evidence for, which is folks organizing and forcing the institution to do different.
Let me add to that. We need to get rid of the status quo politicians, the ones that have been there for 1,000 years and haven't done a damn thing but get enriched. We need to get rid of them. We need term limits so that they can only stay in so long. But I think we've become comfortable because we have an alderman that throws a party and everybody can come and eat and drink free. And then the rest of the time, all they do is go and make money for themselves. So we need to get rid of the aldermen and the mayors and whatever, the people that are not doing the will of the people. And the people themselves are the ones who have to do that. We have to get out there and be vigilant. And we have to speak our truth to the power.
Yes. Yes. Exactly, Ms. Payne. I agree. And I mean, this community relations, who decided who's going to be on that committee? Are there going to be people from the community? As Dixon said, they've already studied us. They have the answers. They know what will and won't work. Are they going to put the results of those studies into actions? Or are they just going to sit back and do these nice little reports once a month or every quarter and nothing else changes?
Ms. Tatum, they're putting those studies to work. That's how they're getting rid of a lot of us in the communities. They're using those studies to get rid of what's working.
Yeah.
They're using them right now. Low violence.
Yeah, for their own good. You're right. Not for our good.
And with that, I would like to give a round of applause for all of our panelists. And thank you to each and every one of you for participating in the roundtable discussion. At this time, we have to bring the event to a close since we're reaching the 7:30 time. Again, please feel free to reach out via email or Instagram, which will be posted in the chat. If you have any questions or comments, we ask that you debrief tonight's conversation with friends, family, and colleagues. We believe that collective reflection and strategizing is an important part of this work, especially for those affiliated with the UChicago and benefit from the
David, you're muted.
I did not know I was muted. Did y'all, yeah, did I say please give a round of applause for our panelists?
Just the last, we just missed the last like sentence or two. We caught everything else.
Got you. We hope tonight has left you with inspirations for further inquiry, action, and connections. Once again, we'll be pasting the Google form for in the chat. So for folks who are able to provide feedback on the event and want to get involved with the reparations campaign, you could feel free to do so. And feel free to leave your contact info in the Google form if you'd like to attend. And we'd actually like to have an ask as well, is that tomorrow's Southside Together Organizing for Power, we'll be holding a press conference over at 63rd and Blackstone with other members of the Obama CBA Coalition, where we'll be essentially talking about the city's plans for affordable housing in Woodlawn. And so that is going to be over at 63rd and Blackstone at 11:15 a.m. If you're able to join, we'd be happy to see you there. For further questions, feel free to reach out to Savannah at stopchicago.org with any questions or concerns. Once again, thank you, and please feel free to stay for a few minutes if you have any questions for the organizers. Thank you.